This is video number 3 from section 1.2. The topic is finding x and y intercepts of a linear equation. Let's start with a couple of definitions. What do we mean by an intercept? Well, essentially, if you have a graph, for example, here's a linear function, when we say intercept, we simply mean the spot where the graph crosses either the x-axis or the y-axis. And so this point is called the x-intercept, and this point is called the y-intercept. Now this is a qualitative graph. There are no numbers anywhere. In spite of that, I know one of the coordinates of each of these points. For example, the x-intercept, I'm not sure how far to the right I need to travel, so I'm not sure what the x-coordinate is, but I know I don't go up or down, so I know that the y-coordinate is a 0. Similarly, with the y-intercept, I know that I don't go left or right to get to that spot, so the x-coordinate is a 0. I'm not sure how far I went up. I don't know what the y-coordinate is. Notice that the x-intercept always has a y-value of 0. The y-intercept always has an x-value of 0. Well, this is really the secret to finding intercepts. Let me write down the rule for you. We say this: to find an intercept, simply set the other variable to 0. I think the key words in that are other variable. If you want an x-intercept, set the y to 0. If you want a y-intercept, set the x to 0. Well, let's try this out in the example problem that's given below there. This problem says find the x and y-intercepts for this equation that is shown. The equation is y equals 3/4 x minus 1. Well, let me start with the y-intercept. That turns out to be the easier one. According to our rule, if I want to find the y-intercept, what I need to do is I need to set the other variable to 0. In other words, I need to go to this equation and I need to replace the letter x with a 0. This is actually very simple to work out. Because of the 0, I end up with y equals -1. That -1 is the value of the y-intercept. If I want to state it as an ordered pair, well, I already know that the x-coordinate is 0. That's where we started. The y-coordinate is -1. We say the point 0, -1 is the y-intercept of this equation. Let's try the x-intercept. Well, to find the x-intercept, I use my strategy, set the other variable to 0. That means this time I need to fill in a 0 where I see the y. Now this is going to be a little bit more complicated to work out. I don't have the x by itself here. I'm going to have to actually solve this equation for x. Since it has the fractions in it, one strategy that you might find helpful would be clearing the fractions by multiplying both sides by the lowest common denominator, in this case 4. So I'll multiply the left side by 4, and I'll multiply the right side by 4. On the left, of course, 4 times 0 is just 0. On the right, let's go ahead and distribute that 4 so we don't make a mistake. I need to multiply the 3/4 x by 4, and I need to multiply the 1 by 4. So that gives me 0. Here the 4's cancel, leaving me with 3x, and then 1 times 4 is 4. And then I just have a couple of simple algebra steps left. I'll add 4 to both sides. I'll divide both sides by 3. And I end up here with x equals 4/3. 3 doesn't go into 4, so I have no way of simplifying this any further. The fraction doesn't reduce. I don't have any reason to go to decimals, so I leave it like that. The final answer, if I want to state it as an ordered pair, well, I have the x value there. I just found it. It's 4/3, comma, the y-coordinate is 0. That's how we started. The y-coordinate of the x-intercept is always 0. And so here is the x-intercept of that function. Now, one last point to mention. Our equation that we started with was in the good format, the y equals mx plus b format. This process of finding the x and y intercepts can be done even if the equation is not in the right format. Let's look back at problem number 1. Remember this example, 2x plus 3y equals 3. This is not in the good format right now, but finding the intercepts would actually be very, very simple. If I wanted to find the y-intercept, I just need to set the x value to 0. Well, setting the x to 0 is basically just going to wipe this part out. And then I would just have to solve this equation. You can see I'm just going to end up with y equals 1. Or if I wanted to find the x-intercept, then I would just need to set y to 0. Well, again, that's really just going to wipe this part out here. Solving for x quickly would get me x equals 3/2. So sometimes it's easier to find intercepts when the equation isn't in the good format.